Hi, it's Jasmin. You know, that girl who did you know what way before the internet ever existed. Join me and my special guest every week as we talk about anything and everything because nothing is too taboo. So punch your ticket and get on board the Krazy Train with me, Jasmin St. All aboard! Welcome to a brand new episode of Krazy Train Podcast. When you think of wrestling and wrestling geniuses, I'm sure one name comes to mind, and that's Vince Russo. So here he is. You are a complete wrestling icon.
Is that the pillow guy next to you? Is that a pillow guy bobblehead?
Yeah, it is.
What is the significance of that, if you don't mind me asking?
I read his book.
Oh,
Not that his book applies to me, but I like good books. Plus, I also like his towels.
So did his book inspire you?
Actually, it was just a really good read because I'm working on my own autobiography. So I'm just reading other people's stuff. So I read his, like Joan Jett, Dan Fonte, like a few other ones, just to see how they're written. Because the way the stories are done, like they kind of weave back and forth. Like you have a book, right?
I got two books. I'm actually going to be doing a third one soon.
Jesus Christ! Like when do you ever stop?
Yeah, writing a book is very. How deep into it are you?
Deep into it to the point where I'm listening to like 80s music again and getting back into it because I'm in that era. And you get it, like you're in that era of your life.
Right.
So when I wrote my one woman show, it was the same thing, but now it's just the book based off the show in the larger version, I guess. But to do 3 books, I mean, you must have like so many stories to go in there.
Well, it's like it was kind of like I always wanted it to be like kind of like 3 volumes. Like the first volume was, just my early life, WWE. The second volume was like right smack in the middle with WCW. This last one is going to be TNA and basically what I'm doing now in my life.
Yeah, you seem to really reinvent yourself quite a bit and just stay extremely relevant, which is tough. Now, do you follow wrestling nowadays, like AEW, Impact?
Yeah, Jasmin, I'll be honest with you, man. I'm like you. I know Jasmin St. is big business. I know you've been big business for a long time, and you do a great job branding yourself. I'll be honest with you. I only watch wrestling if I get paid to watch wrestling, because I would not waste 1 second of my free time watching wrestling in 2024.
Why?
It's awful. It's not wrestling. I mean they can call it something else if they want. It's not wrestling. I grew up on wrestling in the early 70s. What you're seeing today is not wrestling. They've turned it into some hybrid circus soleil with performance art, whatever you want to call it. No characters, no storylines, and it's just not my bag, man.
No, I agree with you. I feel as though just people doing spots for the sake of doing big spots, but nobody's selling a storyline. Like I see the Impact storyline right now with PCO, which is amazing, but it's like it's good. Like I was saying to myself, wait a second, is Vince back? Is he writing by any chance? Like is he making sense of things?
Unless you are a die-hard wrestling mark, and I mean, in-ring wrestling action. Unless you're into that, which is a very niche market, today's product is not going to grab you. That's why, man, when I started watching wrestling, man, when I started writing, I knew we had to get that mainstream television audience who did not like wrestling. And the only way you were going to get them, man, is if you had something for everybody, characters and storylines. That was the only way you were going to get television viewers. You weren't going to get them through the wrestling.
That's true. And I think people pay to see people that are cooler than they are, or you think are cooler, and people that look like stars. Like some shows I work on, like last year, these guys walk into the back like they're off the damn street.
Yep. Yeah,
like
yeah, no,
sneakers, no socks.
yeah, listen, nothing's changed, man. When we put on the TV, when we go to the movies, what do we want to see? Television stars, and we want to see movie stars. I don't want to see my next door neighbor. If I want to see my next door neighbor, I'll go outside and knock on his front door. And that's when I put on wrestling today. There's a lot of my next door neighbors wrestling, and I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to see my next door neighbor on OnlyFans or like on Pornhub, but it seems like there's a lot of that too. It's just everything's diluted. There's no more star quality. I mean, I go on TikTok and some girl that like spat on a cock gets all, it's like, dude, that was done in the 90s. Where the hell have you been? Seriously. Um, I feel as though a lot of programs today, and I watch a lot of shows, it lacks a lot of TNA, so to speak. What was your whole take on that? Like, why did you bring that into wrestling? Was it because it was predominantly a male audience or because sex sells, sex and
Well, you know,
violence?
it's funny, Jasmine, because, you know, during the height of the Attitude Era, not only was it a predominantly male audience, but it was a college audience. I mean, bro, you know, we had people at, you know, colleges and fraternities getting together every Monday night and having, you know, WWE attitude parties. So you were really getting back then the 18 to 22-year old. I mean, that's who you were really getting. And listen, I am never going to apologize for, you know, guys are fans of TNA. I am not going to apologize. It's not that I was a fan of that. I mean, my God, I've been married for 42 years. But it was never about what I liked. It was about what does the audience like. I mean, Jasmine, you can go all the way back. Go back to Johnny Carson. Every time he had a starlet or a television star on that show, how did they dress? They had the skirt up to here, cut down to here. That goes all the way back to the freaking 60s. Sexuality sells, and I'm not going to worry about being politically correct and saying that. That is a fact. People like to look at sexy looking women. Women like to look at sexy looking guys. That we're just animals that way.
That's 100% true. I couldn't have said it better. And everything is extremely unbarred here. I mean, I had Teddy Hart on once before, so trust me, that was, yeah, I needed a drink in the middle of that at some point. Um, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like I still work on shows and I feel as though cancel culture has somehow played into the disruption of the sexuality and the other storylines. Do you think cancel culture has destroyed wrestling today to some degree?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's destroyed a lot of things in general because now people are afraid. You know, we were never afraid, man. We did so much stuff outside of the box. We were never afraid. Now, you know, now you're watching wrestling that's trying to be safe. Wrestling should not be safe. Wrestling should be dangerous. Wrestling should be unpredictable. Wrestling should be edgy. When you take all that stuff away, it's just not interesting anymore.
What are your thoughts on a lot of girls, like a lot of females doing death matches?
Uh, Jasmine, listen, I'm old school, and people can call me a sexist. I really could care less. I cannot stand seeing women bleed. Like I can't watch it. I mean, it is such a turn off to me. And not only that, Jasmine, watching the women wrestlers trying to do what the male wrestlers do. They're not built that way. I'm sorry, a female does not have the same, you know, bone structure of a male or the muscle density of a male. So when they go out there and try to do exactly what the men are doing, they are increasing their chances of being injured enormously. And I don't watch wrestling to see people get injured. It's supposed to be safe. So I am not a big advocate of that.
You're not being sexist. I feel as though as soon as we had some women's wrestling, it was great, but now it's just overdone. It's sort of taken it back with like with female managers. I feel as though every female manager, you should learn how to work. That's how you protect yourself. That's how you know how to get up for certain bumps and how to tuck your chin. But now we have, there are not as many female managers. And I felt as though that played an important part in wrestling. Do you think managers played a really good role?
You know, well, especially, I mean, I think I'm a little older than you, but especially like in the 70s, man. I mean, when you had guys like, Lou Albano and Freddie Blassie and the Grand Wizard of Wrestling, like back in the 70s, they played a huge, huge part. But yeah, man, I remember, Terry Runnels, when I worked during the Attitude Era, I mean, there were a lot, Sable, my God. There were a lot of, but you know what it was, Jasmin, the women, they were special attractions. So that made them special. Like you said now, when you see 3, 4 women's wrestling matches on the show and they're all doing the same thing, there's nothing special about it anymore. And there was a time where having women on the show was really, really special.
Yeah, I kind of miss that in a way. I feel as though it's overdone and it's like, oh, we could do it too. We're women. We could do it just like the guys can. Actually, no, you can't because you don't have a penis. You have a vagina and you have a different muscle mass and you're feminine. And there's nothing wrong with being feminine. One of my favorite managers growing up was woman. And someone told me that she had a very special perfume when she went to the ring. Did you ever experience that? Because I want to know what she
No,
was wearing.
I never heard that before. That's interesting. I never heard it before.
I finally adopted like wearing really good perfume to the ring, not after hearing that, but working with death matches, you're around. I didn't know like wrestling was evolving into death matches now and working around that. It's just such a swampy smell sometimes. So
Yeah, you
the
got to be
heavier the perfume
careful.
to
You
drown
got to
it
be
out.
careful. You got to be careful. I hope none of that blood's getting on you or anything. You got to be careful with that.
No, nothing's happened yet. And I've been to Japan too and still nothing. So that's good. I'm glad. I don't want it. What would you say? And I'm sure you get this question a lot. What would you say was the downfall of WCW?
Oh, I think definitely the guaranteed contracts, because that gave that when wrestlers have guaranteed contracts, that gives them the power to do what they want to do and not do what they don't want to do. And then it becomes very, very difficult. And I was faced with that a little bit at WCW. The guys had guaranteed contracts and they were making so much money, and if they didn't want to do something, they just didn't do it. And how can you be a successful writer if you have actors on the show that don't want to do what's written on the page? I mean, can you imagine, Friends? If Phoebe shows up one week and says, no, I'm not doing this, so it makes it very, very, very difficult and challenging as a writer.
Well, you'd be surprised. There was a show called Man in the High Castle, and I knew all the writers on that. But at one point, the initial showrunner let the actors take over what they were doing because he had no clue what was going on. And then it's like letting the inmates run the asylum. This person all of a sudden has more lines than the other person. Someone that's a day, like a guest day player, all of a sudden is there for 3 or 4 episodes of it. So I totally get what you're saying. And did you ever have ideas that anyone turned down? Are you looking for a safe way to bet online where there is something for everyone, including yourself? Then go to betonline.ag where I am sure you will find something. Don't forget, it's betonline.ag for the most variety and the safest way to bet online.
See, that's the thing, man. Half of my job was literally being a psychologist / psychiatrist, because as I would sit at this desk and write out a show, in my mind, I already know how that particular talent is going to react to what I'm writing. So in my mind, I am already prepared. This is what I'm writing. This is what they're going to say and think. And this is how I'm going to sell it to them. So believe it or not, man, that is really all part of the writing process. You know that everybody is not going to like everything you write, but your goal as the writer is, okay, I know I wrote the best show possible. I got to get them to do this show. And that's where, a big part of my job, man, was literally being a psychologist, a psychiatrist, getting in their head, knowing what they were going to like, not going to like, knowing how I had to overcome that to sell it. That was a big part of my job.
Yeah, you'd think that people would just be grateful to have the opportunity because there's so many other people out there who wanted that same spot or that same chance, that they just say, sure, no problem, I'll do it. Yeah, depends on what it is.
And there also just needs to be a level of trust. I mean, you got to trust the head writer of the show knows what he's doing. If you don't have that level of trust, you're never going to get anywhere.
Would you write on TV again? You did write on TV prior, right? Years before?
Before wrestling?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I was really a print writer. I mean, I was writing for the WWE magazine. Because I have a degree in journalism. So I was really a print writer before I became a television writer.
Well, would you write on a TV show now?
No, not. I still do some writing with like an independent group here in Colorado because it's a friend of mine, and I mean it's fun, but at that level, at my age, absolutely not, man. There were so much politics involved, and I am not a political guy, and at where I'm at in my life right now, I have zero interest in doing that.
Well, what if the phone rings and let's say Tony Khan's on the other line or Impact's on the other line? Would you do it?
I would consult, which would mean I would sit right here in my office and write notes and write scripts and tell you what I think. To get on a plane and drop myself in the middle of that on a weekly basis, literally for $1 million, I would not do that.
Really?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's a mad show, I guess. I could kind of see why you wouldn't want to do it, and things are just very normal now, and you're setting your schedule. How many podcasts do you have? Just the one podcast, the Vince Russo show?
Oh God, no. I probably record 12 to 15 podcasts a week. Yeah,
Which ones?
I do shows daily on my Patreon, on my channel. I do shows for Sportskeeda. I do probably 12 to 15 shows a week.
Now, if you didn't get involved in sports with WWE, WCW, what would you have done? Do you think you would have ended up on TV?
I would have definitely. I got married when I was 22. I got married right out of college. I got married, so that changed a lot of things for me. If I didn't get married that early, no doubt I would have planted myself right smack in the middle of Hollywood. And I mean, I would have been writing TVs and movies, like no question about it. That's what I would have done.
It is soul sucking, says every writer who's ended up in Hollywood. And it really takes the best of some people.
But you know what though? Like content is such king today that, my God, if you have any kind of talent writing and you just get your ass there, you will be successful.
I feel as though with content creating, it's so time consuming, right? Like, do you have
absolutely.
TikTok? What social platforms do you have besides Twitter?
Well, socially, I only really use like Twitter and YouTube. I only use those two because, like I said, man, I am so busy recording shows that I don't have time to use all those social media outlets. So my go-to is pretty much Twitter and YouTube. That's basically the two I use.
I see. Now, when you were working at WWE, did you feel as though there was some kind of did you ever feel as though there was tension between you and Vince at any point, like towards the end, or like just did you ever feel like you were walking on eggshells?
Absolutely not, because I was making them a shitload of money. So absolutely not. I mean, I was really like the golden goose. Like we never had a fight. We never had a disagreement. The reason I left was because he made the comment to me that I was making enough money to hire a nanny to watch my kids.
Huh.
When I realized he cared that little about me and my family, that's when I left the company. But we
nothing never comes
never
good of that.
argued. I told him how I really felt. We never had a single issue.
Well, you're from New York, of course you're going to tell him how you really feel.
And he wanted that. He wanted that because he was from the East Coast as well, and he wanted that and he respected it, and I think that's why we got along.
That's possibly a reason. Where in New York are you from?
Long Island.
What part? Amity?
No, further out in Suffolk County.
So what even got you into writing for a wrestling magazine?
I had a couple of video stores on Long Island when they were just starting up, and Blockbuster put me out of business, and I needed a job, and I wound up just writing Linda McMahon a letter, and Linda was in charge of the WWF publications. So Linda hooked me up with the editor of the magazine. I started freelance writing for the magazine. I became editor of the magazine. That's what got me in the building. And then from editor of the magazine, I just started writing for television.
What were maybe three of your favorite gimmicks that you wrote for at WWE? Like three of your favorite characters?
Well, definitely Goldust, because that was so outside of the box and so creative. Val Venus was tremendous to write for, bro. Some of the lines and the verbiage the both of us came with together. And I would say, probably, I mean, the Rock and Austin, like they came up with a lot of that stuff on their own. Working with Percy Pringle, though, Paul Bearer, that was great because he was an unbelievable storyteller. And he was probably the best storyteller I ever worked with. So getting to collaborate with him on a bunch of stuff was a lot of fun.
I liked Val Venus's character. It was one of my favorite characters ever. And like I guess it was kind of a mullet that he had at the time.
Yeah.
And were you the one that what was?
Yeah, you want to hear I know you don't know this story, but you will get a kick out of this story. So before Val Venus appeared on television, we did Val Venus vignettes. And we did them at Bruce Pritchard's house. And we hired Jenna Jameson. Mm-hmm. Okay? We had Jenna Jameson in Bruce Pritchard's hot tub, naked with Val, like the sexiest, steamiest, hottest stuff that would have ever been on television, right? So we shot all this stuff. Jenna was freaking great. Her and Val got along. We shot all this stuff. So we had to bring it back to Vince to show Vince what we shot. Vince left about 80% of it on the cutting room floor because he said Jenna Jameson was ugly. And I was like, bro, like at that time, she was the hottest star in the industry. And we were like putting her with Val. That was like, oh my God, this is gold. and Vince cut 80% of it because he thought she was unattractive.
Well, to each his own, but that's kind of a weird thing to do, especially if you have that type of traction. Because back then it was TV that we were doing, like the Stearns and all that stuff, which I beat her in ratings when I came along later on. But I get that, what you're saying, but he just put it on the cutting room floor.
Just didn't use it. Just did not use it.
Now, did you come up with the right to censor gimmick for him? Or was that after?
Was after I left. That was after I left.
What did you think of that? I thought it was ridiculous.
Yeah, I got to be honest, man. Once I left, I didn't watch WWE at all. So like there was a big chunk of time where I didn't watch anything that happened in the WWE.
Well, with the Turner Network, how do you guys get away with having like borderline TNA, like when you had Medeja, Major Guns, girls like that?
It was really weird with standards and practices because I knew I was going to be dealing with standards and practices. I knew it was TBS and TNT. So when I went there, I just said to them, give me a handbook and I will make sure I abide by whatever the standards and practices are. No big deal. The problem was there was never a handbook, so they would change the rules every week. So like you never knew what was going to be okay with them, what they were going to red flag. And some of the stuff they red flagged was like absolutely ridiculous. So it just made my job difficult because there were never rules and regulations to follow. They changed it every single week, so I never knew what was going to fly and not fly.
Give me an example of one of the red flags that just popped up.
I'll give you 2 examples. And
yes.
You'll think these are so ridiculous that you'll think I'm making them up. There was one instance where we borrowed, I don't know if you remember them. This might have been a little bit before your time. We borrowed the Rosati sisters from the WWE. And the Rosati sisters were 3 twin sisters. They were wrestling marks and they were very, very heavy set. Okay? So we had a scene where Roddy Piper walked into the building and he walked past the Rosado sisters, Rosada sisters, and he just started insulting them. Funny, in a comedic way. Standards and practices wouldn't let us watch that because, well, Vince, there may be an obese there may be an obese person watching our show who may be offended. I'm like, okay. Then this one blew my mind. I wanted to have Hall and Nash show up drunk for work. So they show up at the building and they're drunk. So, standards and practice, oh, no, we can't have that. We can't have them showing up drunk to the building. So I said, okay, how about they're both sick and they're downing cough medicine. And the more cough medicine they drink, the higher they're getting. Oh, yeah, okay, that's okay. Exactly. And I'd be like, that's what I was dealing with on a weekly basis. You never knew what was going to be okay and what wasn't.
Well, wait a second. Doesn't cough medicine have like stuff in it to either make you really sleepy or an ingredient that gets you really high?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. But that was okay with them. That was okay. Okay, then they'll drink cough medicine. Okay.
What was that? Weird, were they wrestling that night?
I don't think so. No.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't think you want to put them in the ring drunk.
No. Yeah, no.
Would you have ever worked for ECW?
I don't think I would have been cut out for that. I don't. I don't listen, man, the one thing about wrestling is with me, and it's a big reason why I don't watch AEW.
Mm-hmm.
I don't watch MMA. I don't like watching something where I am constantly afraid that somebody's going to get hurt. I don't like that. To me, wrestling is a work, and it should be safe. When I see these guys doing the crazy moves and the level of violence at ECW, that's just not my cup of tea, man.
Yeah, it was weird being thrown into that. I didn't know what I was signing up for because I watched like Snuka, Ultimate Warrior, things like that. Then being thrown into this whole realm of blood, ladders, barbed wire. It's like, okay.
What was the most dangerous thing you ever had to do?
It depends. Walk through an inch of glass in Japan when we walked out to the ring for a flaming table match, or that time Rhino dropped me off the top rope in a pile driver.
Oh gosh.
Pick one.
Were you okay after that, or?
Paul told me a few minutes before what we were doing. I'm like, okay, fine. And when Rhino stepped away, are you comfortable doing that? Yeah, sure, no problem. I was fine, but I felt as though I could have slipped because they spray that stuff on them in the back.
Yeah.
But he held on to me, so I know I wasn't going anywhere. And this is why I said managers should always have some form of training. You tuck your chin. Get up in a handstand. Because I know some managers don't have training, and then there you are taking like a power bomb, getting slammed. Like, what are you doing? And you've never had training. No one showed you anything.
I agree with you 1,000%. Absolutely. Yep.
That's one thing I miss about doing, like, working in the business, is because I love doing the promos and I love the psychology of everything, selling the legs, selling this, and people just aren't selling. I could see you losing your mind backstage if you work today in the business.
I couldn't. I wouldn't. I would last 24 hours. That's why I tell you, absolutely not. It would be a nightmare for somebody like me, an absolute nightmare.
Now tell us about your books and how people could buy your books.
Yeah, I actually, like I said, I've written 2 books. One's WWE, the other one's pretty much WCW. The third installment is going to be TNA. I'm going to start working on that. But I do everything, all my podcasts and everything come out of russosbrand.com. If you go to russosbrand.com, you will see everything that I'm doing. I also, too, man, I have a Patreon, and if you've never been a member of my Patreon, you can go there, man. You can get a free week, so you could sample every single thing that I do. It's absolutely free. Just go to patreon.com/Russo TWC.
And I guess all your appearances are up there as well.
Yeah, I don't do many. My appearance. I don't like to leave my house, man. Thank God, I got a good shtick where I could make a living just doing this. I don't do many appearances at all.
So I was just in Colorado working for someone up there, Primos Wrestling.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah.
It was a weird night working because there was no blood or glass anywhere.
Oh wow, nice, very nice. Yeah.
Maybe for the September show, but it's got to be different though. Like, it's a way different age now of just sitting at home doing the podcasting, doing the videos. Like, how long did it take you to adjust to this way of life? And I know you're enjoying it. Do you want to spice things up in the bedroom? Well, go to adamandeve.com where you can get something for yourself or that special someone. adamandeve.com and put in the code Krazytrain, that's crazy with a K, and get 50% off of most items and a bunch of free goodies. Again, it's adamandeve.com and put in my code Krazytrain, it's crazy with a K, and enjoy up to 50% off of most items and, of course, some great freebies.
It wasn't adjusting to this way of life. The most difficult thing, Jasmin, is when a lot of people think when they get into podcasting, you're just immediately going to make money. It does not work that way. So the hardest part for me, I mean, I eased into it immediately. Listen, man, people don't understand. I wasn't one of these people that, I wanted to get into the wrestling business. I got into the wrestling business because I needed a job. I always wanted to get into radio. I absolutely love radio. And listen, I got to tell you, man, back then, Stern was a huge influence to me. I started actually listening to Stern in 1983. That's when I started listening to Stern. And I wanted to be on radio. I loved radio. I mean, today Stern, forget about it. But you know what Stern was like back then. So I always wanted to get into radio anyway. So it was so easy for me to get into podcasting. But you got to go a couple of years with making zero money. You've really got to build an audience, and you've got to build a brand. And a lot of people never get through that stage, and they're not making money in 2 years, so they just drop out. But I've been doing this for 10 years now, man. I would not trade it in for anything else. No boss. I don't have to listen to anybody. I don't got to get on airplanes. I don't got to deal in politics. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
It seems more relaxing this way. Like, I love doing this, and I have my live stream, and it's a lot of fun, and I do the wrestling, and it just does. I keep my life going the way I want it to. And sometimes I speak at those podcast conventions. So I met Conrad at the very first podcast movement I was at in Colorado. Did you go that weekend?
Oh man, I did not. No, I did not.
Okay.
Are you in California?
Sometimes, yeah.
Where is your residence?
California.
California, okay.
Getting the hell out, though. And I do a lot of traveling to Europe. So I just came back from Europe, and then I'm going back again to work again and come back. So I just, I bounce around. I do my thing. And I was working for XPW this time around, and that ends like all thing ends with him. So I just moved on.
Yeah. You've never been a East Coast girl, huh?
Yeah, I grew up in New York.
Oh, did you really? Wait, I didn't know that. Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
76th in Central Park West.
Oh, I did not know that. So when did you leave New York?
In the 90s, but I always went back. I still have a place there.
Wow.
It's a very big part of me. I never saw myself as a California person at all.
Yeah, I've always seen you as a California person.
No, I don't fit in. Trust me.
Really. So so you still have roots and family in New York?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I learned so. I don't know why I always saw you in California for whatever reason.
The tan?
No, I think it's more you were always like, since the first time I saw you, which was years and years and years ago, you always to me had a Hollywood vibe. You just had that Hollywood vibe. And that's not a bad. That's not. No,
that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess because you had that vibe, I just assumed it. I'm glad to hear you're from New York, though. That's pretty cool.
Thank you. Merci mille fois. But no, I didn't grow up in like an American household or anything like that. So I've always like been between New York and LA in the 90s, but then I got a place in LA, then I stayed here. But now it's just not what it used to be. So maybe like Florida, or I don't know, just somewhere. Like it'll come to me. These things always just bounce off of me at some point.
Yeah. But you spend a lot of time in Europe?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's cool.
There's a wrestling scene there too. And I feel as though the wrestlers and managers are trained better because they actually do psychology. They do promos. Everyone is respectful and nice and supportive of one another, but they know psychology. And that's the big thing. Like if something makes sense or not. And that's how it works. I like working around people like that.
After all these years, though, you still don't mind the travel. See, I dread when I have to get on a plane. You got no problem with that.
Well, if there's a screaming kid running up and down the alley, like while the plane is taking off, I mind that. If there is someone snoring, I definitely mind that. If someone's dog shits, I definitely have a problem. And those are like far and few between.
Yeah. See, because I swear I've only been to Europe twice.
Oh,
I love it when I get there. I cannot take the travel getting there.
just have a shot of whiskey and you're okay. Or just watch the
Yeah, I
movies. They always
guess.
have great movies. They have great European movies.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool, man. That's cool.
They have French films. Um, yeah, I'll check out your Patreon. I know Patreon's a great way that a lot of people make money off of it. April Hunter's on there. Hey, who are some of your favorite divas to work with in WCW?
April Hunt is actually on my platform. I've got
Is
a
she?
Channel Attitude. Yeah, I got channelattitude.com, and April's got a show on channelattitude.com. Yeah.
You met
I
her.
love, man. I loved working with all the women.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I swear. I think it was because I was always like just a little older than the women, just a little older, and I was happily married. I always though had like a father-daughter relationship, like with all the women I work, and I mean, I worked with beautiful women, but it was like it was never that way. And and I was always fighting for their television time, because that's one thing, man. And I will say this without a shadow of a doubt, man. When I was in the wrestling business, it was very, very sexist. Because if one of the boys felt that a woman was taking their spot or their time, meanwhile, as far as I was concerned, I was all about ratings. I got paid based on how many people watched the show. So if Sable and China are drawing, they're going to be on the show. But back then the guys were really, really very sexist, and if women were getting over before them, they had a huge issue with that.
Well, it's kind of still the same. Um, even
I'm
in indie
sure it is.
wrestling.
I'm sure
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
I think the worst part of indie wrestling is working with green people. Like you get a manager who doesn't sell a Singapore cane. If I whack you with a cane, you're going to sell. And if you
Right.
don't sell, I'll whack you even harder. And then it's everyone trying to get themselves over and they forget you're there for the wrestler in the ring. It's not your job to put yourself over.
All that stuff you're talking about is out the window. It's all out the window. It does not. They don't even think that way. The way Paulie brought you up and taught you, those things you're talking about doesn't even run through their minds.
It's just get out there and do it.
Yep, get out there, get your spots in, get yourself over, get them to cheer. This is awesome, and you did your job. It's forget it.
It's a different world, but who knows? Do you ever think things will ever revert back to what they?
It's gone too far the other way. It's gone way too far the other way.
It's like there's no saving pro wrestling to make pro wrestling great again.
Because well, it's not pro wrestling. That's why it's performance art. It's not pro wrestling.
That's a good way to look at it. Really, you have a very different view. You and Disco Inferno kind of remind me of each other with your views, especially when I spoke to him a few weeks ago. I mean, he went off about AEW
Disco.
with me.
Me and Disco do a show every single week. I've known Disco. Disco's been a great friend of mine for, my God, 25 years now. Yeah.
We were fascinated because he would always go in the ring and never mess up his hair. So he had to explain it was the hairspray he was using.
Yeah. And that was a great gimmick. You don't see gimmicks like that anymore. That was a great gimmick. Yeah.
It's one of the best ones. So give us your socials again really quick and plug your site.
Yeah, I would say, guys, like I said, take advantage of the free week on Patreon. It costs you absolutely nothing. Patreon.com Russo TWC. And bro, I got a YouTube channel. Man, we got over 1,800 videos on our YouTube channel, absolutely free. Just go to youtube.com/Vince Russo brand, and you can get all those videos absolutely free.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to reading your book.
Oh, thank you, Jay. And good luck with yours, man. Do you have a ballpark of when you'll have that done?
Well, maybe not for another 2 years, because I feel like I stopped writing when I got back into wrestling. Like, wait a second, the story's not over yet.
Yeah.
The story's still going, man. I can't like stop now. So now probably not for another couple of years, unless I get drawn into something else, not porn, but just something else that's interesting. But I'll keep writing and writing. I say like 2 years from now, because the story's not done.
Well, keep me posted, man. I'd love to read that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.